But one thing I cannot get with my girlfriend is novelty, right?
Remember, tomorrow we have a panel with both of these losers on there, okay? We got both of them on there. They are both on the panel. It's going to be awesome. Here is the thumbnail. It's called The Shootout. I explained why it's called The Shootout yesterday. There's some twists to the panel. We added some rules to it to play some games. Oh, snap. What is this? Hello?
Hey, can you hear me?
Hey, yes, I can hear you.
Cool. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I have been better, honestly. For the past few days, it's been a little crazy.
I can imagine.
Yeah. But I do appreciate your coverage of it from the beginning.
This is unexpected. I'm a little caught off guard, right? Sorry.
No, it's all good. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I was just thinking, like, Hunter talked to Stardust the other day, and it didn't seem to really reignite anything, so I feel like it might be at the point where if I can clear things up, that might be more beneficial than not.
Yeah, sure. So I guess my biggest question is you, in the stuff that was leaked yesterday, it made it sound like you were saying that he leaked everything just because you ghosted him. Is that true?
I still am not positive. I don't know. So he told me the same thing that he told everyone else, that he heard that I was talking about him. But like my response to him, and like there's texts of this, like initially I thought it was just because I ghosted him. I didn't watch the video because it just made me too sick.
Yeah,
like
sure.
I didn't even know that he was, like, for the first few hours that he was saying that I had leaked anything. And then I heard that and I was like, I didn't know, like I was thinking, oh well, that didn't happen, so he must be making an excuse. And then he said the same thing to me when I talked to him about taking the video down. And I'm like, that's not possible because I did talk about you, but it was completely anonymous. I would refer to him as like the manager guy. And like there were even like I don't even know if Hunter, it's not like he ever asked. If he asked, I would have told him. But Hunter like knew what Twitter account he was or anything like that. So it's like there's no way that anything could have been leaked at all.
So that's what he was afraid of, is that Hunter was going to find out and then like smear him on his big channel, and he wanted to get out ahead of it.
That's what it doesn't make sense to me though, because he knew that anonymity was really important to me. So it would not make sense for Hunter to come out with this big expose of him, because it would be doing us more harm than good. It doesn't make sense at all. And also, like, I don't know. It doesn't. I think there is a paranoia there, or I believe that he was just upset that I ghosted him. And he was just lashing. Another thing that I've thought about, but this also might be paranoia, is that like from the very beginning, it was a setup, even in terms of like planning the situation with, you know, the 5 people. Part of me wonders if that was him even requesting that to be done in the first place, so he could use it. I don't know. That might be a little far, and I have no proof of that. That's kind of just speculation. So I think, like, I guess the 2 most likely scenarios in my head is that the whole thing was a setup from the very beginning, and he wanted to just like screw with Hunter. Or he started developing feelings for me and he got mad at me ghosting him, or it was a mix of those 2.
Well, I mean, people are saying that he's like a pimp and he tweeted out yesterday that his entire plan was to get both you and Hunter to do sex work.
Mhm.
Do you not believe that narrative?
I don't know. I mean, that's kind of the thing that I kind of got, the vibe I got through the whole situation. Um, that would make sense. But I think there was more than that with the level of retaliation that happened. Um, yeah, I don't know.
What you just said a minute ago about the 5 people? Maybe I misunderstood. Were you saying that it was his idea?
So what had happened was, through the campsite, there are people who can like request things, um, outside of camming, and you can kind of negotiate with them off stream. Um, and so, this person had asked if I would do like a custom video, and I was like thinking about it. And I kind of didn't really respond to that person for a while because there wasn't really an urgency, and I didn't really even want to do it in the first place. Um, but then there was like one instance when I actually, ironically, it was because it was sparked with like Hunter and I had a disagreement about um, how public the divorce stuff was. And that just kind of devolved. um, and, for the most part, everything has been very amicable, but you're always going to have those highs and lows. And during that time, I was like, this is going to be healthiest for everyone for us to both have some space, which is kind of when I started rethinking that person who had reached out to me initially, asking for the custom video. And that's when I responded to that person and started coordinating. And if you look at the dates, everything lines up with the dates there.
So, well, the confusion is like you guys, when he said that, when he announced the divorce and when you guys actually talked about separating, because Hunter said, I think last night to Stardust that that actually came like a bit before the the divorce announcement, and nobody is really clear on when that was, and so now everybody's still confused on what the order of
Right.
what the timeline is.
So we had talked privately at the end of May, so like around the 27th, I believe, of May, and we had decided to do the separation at that point in time. So the 7th was when he announced it publicly, and I have DMs of having the planning in terms of like the 5 people or whatever that also happened on the 7th, because that whole argument developed um, from the announcement in the first place. The thing that people are wondering, I think, more so is when on the 15th of May there was some sexting going on.
Mm-hmm.
And the weird thing like with this all is, I think at the beginning I was very clear and upfront with like Hunter's involvement in terms of him of communicating to Kingston. Everything was very Hunter come along on the trip, or and it seemed like he was really pushing back on that. There's one screenshot I think that came out with basically him saying, anytime that I have any communication, or if I'm trying to flirt with you, I feel like I'm flirting with your husband because you're scared of like cheating on him, basically, right? So at that point, like I kind of just stopped telling him that I was looping Hunter in on everything. I still was keeping, Hunter in the loop, and I still was like talking to him about stuff. I just wasn't, being as vocal about that to Kingston. I also wasn't, one thing I think I should have done is I didn't want to worry Hunter as much, and I knew that, he was going to kind of come from a biased standpoint, and I'm like, he doesn't understand the industry either. So I was trying to kind of get other people's perspectives on how Kingston was behaving and like, is this normal? And there is, multiple screenshots of me reaching out to people before all of this came out, basically being like, there's a situation and I need your opinion on it because it's making me uncomfortable.
When was
So
that?
when did I reach out?
Yeah, like when did you start feeling like he was making you feel uncomfortable?
So it was kind of a slow fade. It was never like I was afraid that there was like a rape situation or he was going to rape me or anything like that. And I think that's kind of that might have been implied in the initial thing that I released by accident. I didn't mean to make him out to that I was like afraid he was going to rape me. The thing that was uncomfortable to me was that it is weird that when you're in kind of a business relationship that you're kind of expected to be very like flirtatious and sexual. That kind of rubbed me the wrong way also in the way that he was handling stuff with me trying to be discreet with Hunter about everything. That was uncomfortable to me because I'm always very open with Hunter and Hunter's very open with me about stuff. And that's just always how we've operated with that. Like, and I feel like if I don't operate that way, then it eats me up inside and it makes me really uncomfortable. So like all of that was very uncomfortable, I think. And he like it just seemed more and more controlling as time went on. At first it was very much like when we first started talking, it was very much, this is how this works. You can kind of do your own thing. The only thing is, you need to make sure that you're posting enough and stuff like that. So that kind of was the dynamic initially. But then it started into like when I talked to Hunter about when Hunter and I talked and mutually came to the decision to do the separation, um, he was mad at me. Kingston was like literally mad at me because I didn't listen to him, right? And he was like, your punishment for that is to record yourself as someone. And so there was just like a lot of
Wait,
things
to
with this.
record yourself as someone?
Yeah, like
What does that mean?
blow job or like doing something like
Oh.
sexual with someone. And he like asked specifically for it to be like a black guy, right? It was odd. It was strange. Um,
So, I mean, you're saying that you felt like it was weird that you thought you guys had a business relationship and then it turned sexual, but from the way he tells it in his video, like you guys were talking about sexual stuff fairly
mhm.
early on, and that's why you guys bonded and connected and kind of had this relationship is because you guys were already talking about a bunch of intimate sexual things. So it seems like he felt like your relationship had this sexual dynamic to it from the beginning and then became business.
So yeah, and so I feel like you can have conversations about like past sexual experience without it being flirtatious. Um, I feel like that's a very common thing, and I mean, like, so how our conversation started was talking about social topics, right? So transgenderism, that whole situation, that whole debate of like what is what is a woman, sex versus gender, that whole thing. We started and it was a long conversation, and then it kind of went into purity culture and um like me being raised in a very conservative and sex negative household, so that kind of stems from that conversation, and then just by virtue of his work, um it kind of went further into like, well, oh, that's crazy here, you grew up very conservative Christian, and then what happened after that. I went to college and there was a point in time where I was kind of exploring and I didn't really know what I was doing. So like I talked about that a little bit, and there are some really funny stories surrounding that. Because, it was a very strict campus and there were a lot of like holes or, loops you had to jump through if you wanted to, be physical with people on that campus. So, I was talking about that. And then I think that also just kind of went into a conversation about like ethics in terms of sexuality. So like everything was, I was telling him things, he was telling me things, but it to me it didn't seem like flirting. Um it like genuinely just did not seem like flirting to me. But I mean, I guess I could see how it could be perceived as that. The thing that bothers me though is like on the 15th, he's like specifically saying that I'm not flirting with him. So it seems like contradictory to that narrative of, oh, I was flirty from the very beginning.
But weren't you guys already sexting before the 15th?
So I was sending him stuff that I was producing, but it wasn't in a sexual like way. It wasn't like engaging in a sexual way. It was like, what do you think about this clip? Should it be shorter, fat, like that type of thing. Um it wasn't like a sexting in a personal way whatsoever.
Is there any way he saw it that way? Or you think he just like you do you think he saw it as personal, or he saw it as business, or he thought that you wanted to do business because you liked him?
Um, I feel like it's weird for him to think it was something other than business slash friendship because of how he went back to like, I feel like you're not engaging with me sexually. Um, and he also brought up something, he called it the hoe code, right? Where he was like, basically saying that like when you're in this industry, this is your commodity, right? And you kind of use that where you can to pay people back for doing things for you. Um, so to me, that seemed insinuating that that was the situation there. And it's like I'm not like, for me sex isn't necessarily, obviously it can be very emotional, right? But it doesn't necessarily have to be. And that's kind of where I was, is that Hunter and I had talked about just me sexting in this industry. And, again, his boundary was like, don't do any physical with any other guys, right? Um, and, I told him that I was sending him things. So there wasn't any cheating going on. I mean, that's the thing, is like, I guess I could see him thinking that I don't know. I don't know if I can see him thinking I was flirting with him, just because of all those times where it seems like he was pushing me to be more flirtatious, you know?
Well, up until a certain point, you mean?
Um, with pushing me to be more flirtatious.
Yeah, like you're saying he couldn't have seen you as being flirting and or
Mm.
flirtatious up until a certain point, because obviously there's the point where he's saying like, "Hey, I was trying to get you to engage sexually," and you're like, "Oh, my bad. Is this better?" Like there's
Yeah.
I don't think past that point, I don't think there's any question that there's like more of a sexual dynamic to your
Yes.
relationship now.
100%.
And
Yeah.
so when we're talking about up until a certain point, is that
Yeah.
the point, or
Yeah.
is there stuff
I,
before that?
that's the point. I think that's definitely the point. I don't think there's anything that I would consider flirting before that point. I mean, obviously we were talking about sexual things because that was the industry, right? And he was seeing sexual content for his professional opinion. Um, I think there were things I perceived, there were things from him that were flirtatious, but I just kind of sidestepped them, which I think was kind of what led to the 15th situation, where he would just like make comments like, I guess like him saying like, oh, if I were around when you were in college, that I would have loved that type of thing. Um, and I just kind of was like, oh, really? And then moved on. Like it wasn't like I engaged with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. So like I don't feel like I flirted back before the 15th, and that's what I think kind of made him call me out on that. And by that point, I had already, been doing the OnlyFans stuff never actually even took off. There were only like a few subscribers because of how it was not very long that I had been doing it. And actually like the Texas trip was going to be the thing that sparked it. Um, um, so, but I had already been doing some camming, and I was already kind of getting a little bit more comfortable in terms of, I guess, being more sexual. So by the 15th, I was like, okay, this is obviously kind of something that is part of doing what I'm doing. Um, and I mean, obviously, looking back, I think that there's a difference between doing it in different venues, right? And I think that should have been a bigger red flag to me.
But why wouldn't you set those boundaries? Because, like, it's obviously turning sexual eventually. You can see that he's being flirtatious with you, and you're obviously sending signals, but it escalates over time.
Mm-hmm.
Did
Yeah.
you become more interested, or are you saying that he just like that you didn't want to do this and you just kind of felt like pressured into it?
So I would say that there is definitely a point where I do feel like on a physical level, there's an experience there, which, is fine. I also am not,
What does
I
that
don't,
mean? Like you started to like him?
no, I'm saying that since the time I was 19, I've, n- I've only been with one person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like any previous activity has been like with college age people, right? So there's a level of like, um, I am not very physically experienced in this situation, in this context. um so I think there's, and the way I view sex too is just, I think it might be a little bit different. I think honestly the way I view sex, you again, it's like it can be like an emotionally bonding experience, but then I think it can also be just an exploration, right? So I wasn't necessarily opposed to the idea of, after Hunter and I had ended things, um, kind of being more sexually exploratory even with him necessarily. Um, but the thing that like rubbed me the wrong way is that it seemed like he had more of like, I don't think he ever like wanted a monogamous relationship, but the way that he was interacting and the way it just seemed very controlling, and it seems like it was more than just like, oh, you know, no strings attached emotionally type of thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Um.
It wouldn't have just been a hookup, I guess. And that's kind of the vibe I got from him, which kind of threw me off too. Because I think like he was putting more into that than I was. Um, it's also not something that I had been wanting or planning, um, before any of this. Like it's not something that I was like, oh man, I want to do stuff with this person. It's just not, that's not how I was viewing it. I was sexting him. And I think that's very different than like physical stuff. Like, I don't know, like there's a big difference between sexting someone and doing something with someone physically.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, you've put out DMs supposedly showing that like Hunter knew about this, that you guys were talking about bringing Hunter with you. He even put out a DM saying that he, like, his whole plan was to have both you and Hunter in the sex industry. So I don't know why he would include Hunter in that if Hunter was supposed to be very separate from all of this.
The
Go
weird
ahead.
thing that I feel like it always kind of came back to him was how strategic he wanted everything to be. Like, he didn't want me to talk to Hunter about potentially separating. He, instead of just talking to him, like, because we had discussed doing an open marriage, and he didn't want me to broach that topic with him at all. I did, because I'm like, this is my marriage. I'm gonna like talk to my husband about what I want to talk to him about. I also told him that like I would be fine with him being with other people if I was there. Like, there were a lot of conversations that I had with him that I didn't disclose to Kingston because he wanted me to be very strategic and closed off to Hunter, which I just wasn't. And that was, I think, kind of what made him upset. And multiple times where he was like, he felt like I had this like divided loyalty thing. And I'm like, it's just very weird. I don't know. And, even when I was thinking like I need to get out of this, I didn't even know how to, because I feel like number one, I was like, this person has a ton of connections. If I want to make it in the industry, I'm going to need connections, which honestly is, I guess, that probably is my first, or not my first issue was trusting in the first place. Second issue, I think, was thinking that way, of like thinking it would be hard to succeed without his expertise, or it would be easy to get scammed without his expertise, or feeling like he was trying to keep me safe to a degree in what I was doing. And I think I trusted that. And I felt like that was like a safety blanket, right?
Mm-hmm. So do you think
But
if he listened to this, he could feel like he was being used in a way?
so that's the thing, is like, from even the stuff that I had, from even the DMs, right? From the very beginning, is all he wanted in return was to be able to talk to me. So I felt like there was kind of like a moving of the goalpost.
Was that
Where,
stated that he
yeah,
wanted in return was just to talk to
just to
you?
talk to me, yeah, to have conversations.
Okay.
So
And it wasn't like any sort of type of conversation. He just wanted
no,
some sort of interaction with you.
yeah, his I guess logic behind that was our conversation with like the trans stuff. I think he felt like it was a very good and productive conversation, which I agreed with. I thought that, and then I think is one of the reasons why I trusted him in the first place, is we found like common ground. I think we both ceded things to the other person, and it just went well. And it seemed like that was kind of what he had wanted in return, was like that type of dynamic. But then there are, more in the DMs, he started saying stuff like, at first I wasn't expecting enough in return, and I was giving way too much for free, and that type of thing. And it just seems like he started pushing more and more for there to be more, for me to be giving him more. So I don't feel like I used him. I feel like maybe to the extent that, I guess I would say, to the extent that I definitely went along with, in text, I went along with what he had wanted a lot, because I knew he they get upset relatively easily if I didn't. And if I ever wanted to talk to him about something more, I'd have to do it over the phone because I felt like
super chatted
that's the
5.
only way that we could actually have a good conversation. He would understand where I was coming from. So like it kind of got into this like cycle of me agreeing to things because I was afraid he'd get mad if I didn't. Or even I would like understand why he would want me to do something from a business perspective, and then just the more I thought about it, and like this is just ethically weird to me, and I don't know if I want to do this, and then I wouldn't really know how to tell him that because I was afraid he'd get mad. And like I'm not talking about him getting like yelling because I don't think that really ever happened till like the very end. Um, but more like him being like, "Oh, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. You're on your own," that type of stuff.
You know, I mean, people are going to hear you say that and feel like you're trying to like shirk responsibility to him and say like, well, I didn't really want to do these things. He was kind of pressuring me into do it, like almost taking away a lot of your own agency in this
Mhm.
situation. So is that how you feel?
So I think there's something to be said that a lot of the things he wanted me to do, especially on a physical level, I never did, and I think there's a reason for that. Um, like part of it was because I was going through sickness and also just a lot of stuff otherwise. But there, um, I again, I think it kind of comes down to I don't think even just considering something is necessarily morally wrong, right? Considering something or even entertaining a potential possibility isn't a moral wrong. And if I never did those things, I don't know how much I can be blamed for that. Um, I don't even know. I do think that there were situations where he was pushing me to do stuff. And he even admitted that there were times where he was manipulative. Um, he admitted that in a tweet, right? He said that, yeah, I was being manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like, I guess the thing that I would fault myself for was like not having the not being not being forthright enough in how I was feeling uncomfortable. But I do think there are a lot of variables there. Like it wasn't just because I was trying to be sneaky. It was because it is kind of like a sleazy industry. I did feel like I needed someone who kind of like had my back and that I could trust to actually, make it safely, right? Um, and who knew what they were talking about. And then on top of that, like he was being manipulative. Like all of those things combined, it just makes it a weird situation.
When you say he's being manipulative, what do you think of? Like, what is it that comes to mind when you say he's being manipulative?
So I feel like there was like an element of so one thing I would say, I think the biggest thing for me was that the framing of that all he wanted at the very beginning was to have that to talk to me. And the honest I honestly I think the biggest example was when he was getting like the head, right? And I was like, that was the day that like one of my kids had an accident, and I had to take them to the ER, and it was like the entire day. It was very stressful. It was like terrible. And then, when I got them back to sleep, I was telling him about it, and he was like, "This is a bad time. I'm getting head," right? And I'm like, "Oh, sorry, my bad." And I left it at that. Like I responded to him. I was like, "This isn't a good time. Sorry, my bad." And I just left it. And then like the next text was like a day later asking him specifics about like a question about like what I should be doing. I don't even remember what the question was about, but that's when he said that he ghosted me because I wasn't engaging sexually with him, right? And he framed it like here we were sexting and then she just kind of went off, and and ghosted me. And it's like, no, we were never sexting. What are you talking about? Like, I was busy the entire day. If you look through the logs, there was no sexting going on. It just was very weird. Like, that to me was manipulative.
You're saying
Um,
this is before you guys started sexting and before everything got like overtly sexual.
that was the 15th. That was the 15th when that
Okay.
happened. That's when he said, like, I feel like whenever I try to engage with you sexually, you are scared or you don't want to do it.
Okay. And I guess lots of I'm only asking this because of like the hate that follows Hunter around after him kind of moving in on his political beliefs. How did you end up wanting to do OnlyFans?
Um, so I think part of it was that some of it I don't want to necessarily go into because I feel like there's like a whole can of worms a little bit with that. Like, again, it was something I had talked to Hunter about. It wasn't like, part of it was like an element of exploring my sexuality. um I think one of the many I'm trying to think of how to say this.
I mean, I'll
Part
tell
of
you, I was very religious for a long time,
Mhm.
and once I stopped being religious is like when my outlook on sexuality and sexual relationships and all of those things changed dramatically.
Mhm.
Like, I think that the way that I was raised in an uber religious family always kind of hindered that and hindered
Mhm.
my relationships my entire life, and the
Yeah.
way that I engaged with a lot of other people who where like things could have been very different if I wasn't religious. And so yes, me like all of a sudden leaving religion and kind of opening my eyes to a whole bunch of other stuff, especially at like 33 years old. It's very odd when most people seem to go through this in like a high school age if they're not religious. And so it's all of a sudden like a very weird space to be in. So I understand that it's like that it can almost feel like you're like making up for lost time or something like that. Is that what it felt like for you?
I think for me, I was kind of exploring, I guess, my own sexuality to a degree. Um, and in a way, a lot of it was, I think, there was like an element of spicing things up for Hunter and I as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there was just kind of a mix of that and kind of looping Hunter in. And I'm like, this could be a kind of a good way for us to um I don't know, I mean, I guess spice things up and try different things and all of that. Um, so I definitely think there was an element of that involved. And then, one of the big things is that it is very lucrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's something that definitely was a factor. The other thing I think that, even from my conversations, I was very clear that, the anonymity thing was very important. And um, it seems like there were a lot of steps that could be gone through that could preserve the anonymity. And I do believe that, like, should he never have leaked it, it would have remained anonymous just for the fact that I took so many steps to remain anonymous. Um,
Was that a big worry of y'all's in the relationship?
yes.
Is that this could cause problems for Hunter?
Not as much for Hunter. I do feel like in the space there's a lot of people with OnlyFans and it's kind of considered more socially acceptable at this point. I never even considered that like this level of detail would be like leaked.
Yeah.
That wasn't even like in my framing of the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario to me was like, oh, she has an OnlyFans. And to me, that's something that wouldn't be the absolute worst thing, right? I mean, obviously it was very important to me, but like it was a risk I was kind of willing to take.
Well, I mean, you did choose to keep your like that career completely separate from your online persona that is attached to Hunter. So
Yeah.
there's a reason for that, right?
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
It definitely wouldn't have been ideal still for it to come out. I don't think it would have been the end of the world if that was, what had just come out,
Yeah.
I think it just would be more interpersonally weird. So like if like, family found out, I think that's kind of that was my bigger concern.
Well, and I assume that's like the part that's causing the most distress for you throughout this process is like family and people in your personal life finding out about
Yeah.
this stuff.
Yeah. That's true.
Do you think he's a pimp?
I don't even know. I mean, I actually started calling him a pimp. Like, that's how I would refer to him anonymously to people, is like the pimp, right? And it was kind of a joke. I guess I don't know enough about the industry to be able to even like say if he is or not. I don't know. I mean, he himself admitted that he was manipulative with stuff. I did feel like he got increasingly controlling. And it seemed like he was like, oh, well, if you felt like I was controlling, you should have just told me. And I'm like, okay, well, it's not that easy. Like, there's more variables there.
And a lot of people look at the stuff that came out yesterday with the DMs that he leaked, and you're saying that you're suicidal, and then kind of putting some sort of requirement to not committing suicide attached to that as very manipulative, and you weaponizing suicide. How do you feel about that narrative?
So I don't know if he lied about that to a degree. I have like the DMs. What happened was, after he had deleted the video, like from the very beginning, I had asked him to delete the video and to basically put a statement out saying that it was there was miscommunications, and that he shouldn't have released the video in the first place. That was like my initial ask. He said he wasn't going to release a statement, but I was able to get him to take the video down, or to delete the video. And then after he had deleted the video, that's when I said I'm genuinely considering suicide, because I was not in a good place. I told him after that I was like, I feel like you literally ruined my life. And obviously there's more nuance there, because I was the one who trusted him. I was the one who made that risk analysis for that situation. But I told him, I'm like, I feel like you ruined my life, and I feel like this is just not okay. And then we had kind of a discourse through that, and he was like, this was kind of your fault. And I'm like, all right. But we had that conversation, and then he was like, I just need you to promise me that you won't do what you said earlier. And I said, like, why would you need me to promise that if you don't trust me? How would you trust my promise about that if you didn't trust me saying that I hadn't leaked anything. And I said, if you think that my promise to not commit suicide is going to be worth anything, then you believe me when I say I didn't leak anything, and you should make that statement. So that kind of was the framing, basically saying, kind of calling him out, saying that, like, I don't believe him, that he doesn't believe me that I didn't leak anything. I think he knows I didn't leak anything. And I think the fact that he would trust a promise of me saying I'm not going to commit suicide, he should also trust me in terms of saying I didn't leak anything, because I genuinely didn't.
Sorry, you cut out. You said you genuinely what?
Didn't leak anything.
Okay.
But that, again, that was after the video had already been deleted.
So in the DMs, you're saying that, like, he's kind of, because yes, the video's already deleted. It seemed like he was saying that he only made the Twitter post because of the suicide threat, not. It didn't sound like he was saying he deleted the video because of the suicide threat, that he made a Twitter post because of that. In the DMs, that's what it shows, is him. He sends you like a mock draft of a Twitter post and says, is this good enough? Do we have a deal? And you say yes.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I guess you could frame it as a threat, right? But I mean, to me, it's like, if my promise even matters to you, if you trust that, then why aren't you trusting me that I didn't leak anything? It doesn't make sense to me that he would trust one and not the other. So, I mean, I just was going to leave it after he was like, he didn't want to take it, put it down. It's not like I kept on threatening him or anything. I just was like, all right, have a good one. And then that's when he sent the draft. And then he said, you didn't actually bully me into this type of thing. So, I mean, I don't think the way I didn't feel like I was threatening that. I guess I could understand why someone would, but I don't feel like that's what happened. Initially, when I brought that up, my goal was to get him to understand how monumental what he did was, and how much he fucked everything up.
Is this the first time that you guys interacted after he made the video?
So what had happened with that, it was right after the video was made, and I received it on Friday morning, or I was made aware of it on Friday morning. I messaged him right away, and I was like, I'm really sorry for ghosting you, because I thought that's why you made the video. Please call me. I was afraid you'd be mad about me canceling stuff for Texas. And then I was like, I'm begging you to take the video down. I will literally nuke myself from online, like 100%. This isn't fair to anyone involved. And then that's when I realized that there it was legally revenge porn, and I was like, we're gonna pursue legal action. Then he reached out to a friend of mine, basically saying that, like, he wants to remove the video, but he doesn't want us to think that he's like afraid or anything. And they were like, you should just call, Carissa and work it out. And he did. I had blocked him at that point, though, because I was like, I did not know what to do. But I ended up making contact with him, and we talked through like DMs for a while. And then we called, and that's when he actually started making like physical threats to Hunter. It wasn't during our first call with that. The first call, I just was trying to talk through like what could be done about like moving forward in terms of how we were going to handle stuff. But he did start making physical threats to Hunter and saying that, he can't stay inside all of his life and he has to go to public events. And he said, if you're worried about, because Hunter was initially, concerned he was recording the phone conversations to try to trap us in something, or trying to use it against us in the way that he did the DMs. And he was like, it's you who's bringing in the police. And from where I'm from, threatening that just means that you have to make it worth it. And I don't know why he's pretending to be so macho. I could take him. And it's not like, I don't think it would amount to a physical threat, but he did even text me basically saying that talking hasn't worked. He had not been sure if I had deserved the video in the first place, but he was like, I know Hunter deserves everything. And it was, to me, it's insinuating physical violence, but I don't necessarily have proof of him saying that he was like going to beat Hunter up. But yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't that good.
I mean, he kind of used the fact that you were telling him about Destiny's private information as a reason why he didn't trust you to keep everything to yourself. Do you think that made sense, or that was a good reason from him?
I don't think so. I think he just was trying to get people to watch his video and trying to get attention to it. I never was held to any sort of standard in terms of Destiny's drama with that. There was nothing I agreed to keep to myself or anything. It was something I had figured out on my own, and then I just ended up getting confirmation from someone who was close to the situation. And so it's not like I was under any type of foreign secrecy or anything. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I think it's honestly kind of funny how Chud is handling it a little bit, because with this whole Lauren Southern Destiny situation, he is like, I just was alluding to a rumor. I didn't even cover it, type of thing. And then he's like so ready to cover all of this. And I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, what? Just interesting.
I mean, do you have issues with Chud's coverage of this?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I would like to have a conversation with him at some point, just to like iron things out. I do feel like the initial videos, I haven't even watched them through, because it's been a little hard for me to watch people's coverage. But I do feel like there were a lot of things a lot of framing that he had in his initial videos that were just flat out wrong and detrimental. And I feel like my concern is that somewhere down the line, those are going to be found, and then the rabbit trail is not going to be finished to see how that ends, right?
Do you mean like he took a lot of that stuff back over the last couple of days, and you're saying that a lot of people are only going to see the first video where he makes a bunch of claims, and they're not going to see the second or third video where he walks those back?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of where I'm coming from with that. But I mean, it would be really cool if I could have a conversation, and I'm not afraid of getting pushback here. I know I did stuff wrong. I did plenty of things wrong in this situation, I think. But I would honestly really appreciate it if he did take down the initial videos he made on the situation, or at least like scrub my name from them, because I don't want to have to deal with the fallout from that.
Do you have issues with people covering this stuff? there was a conversation on here last night where somebody was saying that they felt like it could be a problem for people to just cover it at all.
So I don't know. I don't necessarily I don't think it's like a morally bad thing to cover this or anything. I'm not going to fault anyone for covering it. I understand why they are. And I think for plenty of people who are like you're covering it well, I feel like, and I really appreciated it. So I'd much rather have that than like, not people basically making a lot of assumptions and not being very diligent with their coverage. Obviously, I would rather as few people cover it as possible, though, right?
Yeah, of course.
Like, so it's this weird line of like, how much exposure do you give versus how do you kind of correct the record? I don't know. That's weird.
Because, yeah, if you come out and talk about it, then it kind of like make it extends it a little bit farther and maybe blows it up a little bit more, but at the same time you want your narrative out there as well.
Yeah.
Okay. I sent you a DM a second ago.
Okay, cool. Let me see. Sorry, I'm on my phone because I'm a boomer. Yeah, you can come on and ask me questions. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah, sick, if you'll. Okay, there we go.
Howdy. Give me 1 second. I gotta open up a window. I'm not streaming, but can you still throw me a cam, Tom?
Sure. Oh no. Discord just crashed when I tried to turn on my camera. Apparently no. Okay, I think Discord's crashing when I try to turn on my camera right now, so.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm gonna turn on mine still though, because I like to see me talk.
Okay.
It's the narcissism in me. Okay, so first of all, I just want to get it out of the gate. I am here to like ask probably like harder questions that I think people might be curious about, but I don't want to sit here and act like I'm like here to attack you. I just need to prime you a little bit. So
That's fine.
okay. Okay, so one of the things that and by the way, I missed the first 15 20 minutes of your guys' conversation, so you might have answered this. Okay, there was a point in time where Hunter made the statement that what did he say? Any screenshot showing Carissa showing interest in sexual engagement with other people was after we had separated and agreed to divorce. This can be verified, and by the way, verified is very important here. This can be verified by comparing my tweet announcing the divorce and the dates aligned on any messages. But the problem is that he's saying that this is how you verify it, is that I announced the divorce, which I believe was announced on what, the 2nd?
The 7th, I believe.
The 7th? Okay. But all of the text between you and Kingston sexting and or organizing stuff is like obviously before that happens. And one of the problems is that it seemed like you and Hunter, at least on some level, were still invested in keeping the relationship when you're posting a tweet on May 20th saying like how to get your man to come upstairs and kill a spider. I'm not going to ask you if you remember that tweet. I'm sure you do. But you've got sexts with Kingston on the 15th, which is before that, and then on the 24th, which is afterwards. And so to me, in a lot of ways, are you hiding stuff from Hunter? Because it doesn't actually sound like he's aware of what's going on. And to me, it very clearly looks like deception, at least on your part.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So I would say from like the initial tweet, the way like from knowing Hunter and like how everything was being framed, like he's talking about like physical stuff, right? So anything, I think he was talking probably about like specifically the thing with the 5 to 6 people.
Yeah.
I'm sure that
Okay,
that's
wait.
kind of what he was looking at.
Can I get a date? I mean, it's the funniest fucking meme. I'm
It's the
sorry.
7th.
It's
It was the
you
7th. It was the
organizing
same
it
date
on
that the 7th, the same day he announced it.
Okay, can we be real? That feels like cope from you and him to say that it doesn't matter though, because it was posted on the same day that he announced the fucking divorce.
Well,
right?
so again, yeah, and I understand how that looks, but the
It
whole
looks really
reason why
bad how it looks. Yeah.
yeah. So the whole reason why that was being organized in the first place was because there was actually an argument with how open we were being about the divorce and how open he was being about the divorce. So that it kind of spiraled, right? And then on top of that, we hadn't agreed on the divorce at that point. It was, and I think this was already, knowledge because it was in the screenshots. We had only agreed on separation. So here, like, I checked Twitter and I'm like, what? So it kind of like spiraled into like a larger thing because I wasn't even too upset, but then it just kind of devolved. And that's when I was like, it's not healthy for us to be in the same, both of us need space. It's best for everyone involved to have space. And the best way to do that is to be able to help him get out, which is going to cost money. And that's kind of what led to me reaching out to the person who had initially asked me to do a custom video like the week prior, to get more details and set something up, possibly.
But so the guy you were intending on making like the video for, he kind of hit you up about it the week before.
Yes.
So you were kind of like receptive to that idea to some degree, at like making a video for him.
It didn't seem worth it to me at the time, like even for that money, because that's again super gung ho about the idea, like the
Super
framing of
gung
it.
ho meaning like it's kind of like diving into the industry. Is that what you're saying?
I think it was something that I normally wouldn't consider doing.
Okay.
Which is why I didn't really engage with that conversation with him for that week until I kind of became more like, this needs to happen for everyone. This is going to be 1 or 2 days of like me being uncomfortable, but it's going to long term be what's
Yeah.
going to be
Do
healthier.
you understand that even though you say like, and Hunter would probably agree with your point on this, that we weren't, or I wasn't showing sexual interest in a physical sense in people until
Mhm.
after we got or after we announced the divorce, because I was organizing it on the same day. If the guy who you were going to make the video for the hit you up the week before and you had to like make some risk analysis or some evaluation on whether or not it was worth it, it doesn't really sound like you didn't have sexual interest in meeting up with people beforehand. It just sounds like you wanted to do it, and then you realized, like you said, it's not worth it, which is a
So,
completely different statement.
so the week before would have taken it back to June 1st, which is still after we had separated. Um, so it still was after we had that conversation. I think we officially separated on like the 27th. um it's not really something I engage with. People are they on with in the camming situation, people will like just message you or email you about those types of things. um and I mean, again, I kind of do see sex as being, there's an emotional component and there's also a non-emotional component. And I think this past month has been kind of me figuring that out for myself, which involves considering things and then deciding if we're following through or not, right?
Yeah,
And I think
I would say when you go from, trad con kind of guy who like went from the right to the left and very
Mhm.
politically correct and stuff, and then you go from that to like five-man gangbangs, yeah, I'd say there's a little confusion. Like it seems like
Mhm.
two opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'm not saying that,
Yeah.
and
I
that's
don't
not
say that to
even.
mock you. I'm just saying like it's very clear that like it's kind of like when like a conservative or like a Christian might teach their children abstinence, and then they give up on the abstinence thing and they go way on the other end where they just, I mean, it's kind of like the priest daughter meme,
Yeah,
essentially.
sure. So yeah, and that's the thing is it's not something $8,000 is a lot of money, and I feel like a lot of people would probably do, and everyone has a price, right? So the question is, what's the price for people? If someone would offer you $5 million for something like that, you would probably have a hard time turning that down. Maybe 5 billion. So you could probably do a lot of good with that. And I think it's just what's the line for people, and that's something that is sometimes hard to figure out because it's not a super clear line sometimes, especially when there's a lot of emotional situations and you kind of are you're trying to set everyone up for success, and you see that as being the fastest way to do so, right?
Okay. So your claim is that you guys split up officially, not out in public, on the 27th, right? So
Yeah.
all of the sexting with Kingston before you guys come to your whatever conflicts because he's being really aggressive is all before that, right?
Yes.
And I'm assuming most of you, from what I saw, most of your engagement with him. Now, I mean, maybe I haven't seen sexts and they continued after you and Hunter split up, but it seems like most of it is just like the setting up the video, more the businessy end of things, regardless.
Mhm.
But I do want to say, even if that's the case, that would back up your guys' claims that you didn't try to set anything up with people until after you guys were split up. But publicly, there's a completely different narrative being painted, especially when Hunter's going out there and saying like, you can check when I announced my divorce. It makes it sound like that is the day that it was settled, and we should all be judging the situation based on that. So in a way, even if other people have facts incorrectly, or like incorrect facts, it's because of you guys in a big fucking way.
So I think a big part of it is that Hunter and I don't always, I think, we're not always on the same page in how to address stuff like this, right? So, and I think part of that is because we're not together anymore. So I don't really feel like I can comment too much on what he's said about it, other than like I would just say that like the whole timeline is like somewhat confusing, and I think it is it's easy to make mistakes like that, especially at first. I do feel like that's something he should have double checked before saying and thought through a little bit more for sure.
But I mean, you understand with a lot of people not really trusting y'all's side of events because you guys are the ones who are on defense here, right? And so a lot of people are looking at you to give them answers to like why Kingston's doing this and like to straighten out a lot of the gaps that he left there. And then when you're giving us information as though it explains things, but it doesn't explain things, and then everybody's mad that it doesn't explain things, and then you come back with more information that now explains things after everybody's upset about it, it's hard for them to kind of, like, you understand, it's hard for them to kind of grasp what the real truth is there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I would just say, I think the one thing is, he might have had oversights in terms of how the dates lined up, but he never claimed that we split after the 27th or whatever. Like it was there's not any there's he could have done a better job in like trying to verify stuff. But I don't think there's any like actual hypocrisy there or like facts that don't line up. It just wasn't the full story, and people couldn't actually verify things with the way he said that they could, right? But I get that it's optically not the best at all, for sure. I agree.
Well, it's not, I mean, kind of what pisses me off about this entire thing is that I do hear about optics, and I do hear about like Hunter specifically engaging with Stardust, for instance, because she's charitable. I mean, for you guys might be viewing this as like an optics game, but for everybody else, there's people like Kingston, for instance. By the way, absolute scumbag. But there's a lot of ways where he was painted in an unfair light. even as scummy as he is, because of the narrative that you guys were putting out there, and it feels like you guys aren't actually taking accountability for that. You guys are just saying, like, both you and Hunter. Now, you obviously you guys are independent parties. I'm not
Yeah.
putting you guys together, but I'm saying you both have engaged in this thing, in this optics game, and like talked about it like that. But like
Mhm.
it feels like your guys' optic games comes at the cost of other people's credibility, and like I don't know, it just feels really fucked up.
So first off, I don't know how much other people's credit. I feel like he already kind of messed up his own credibility to a degree. Um, I understand what you're saying. I think for me, the issue, I did post the screenshot of him on the 15th, basically kind of being like, you're not engaging with me sexually. And the reason for me doing that was trying to make the point that it's not like there was that initial interest, and there's not, it's like I obviously wasn't like flirting with him right off the bat, and it was proving that to me. But he then came back and he was like, it kind of made me look like you were afraid that I was going to come rape you. And I was like, I responded to him and I was like, hey, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean for that to happen, I'm glad you provided more context, because he provided the surrounding screenshots there. um
But the
but
screenshots that he provided only made you look worse. Are you
that
talking,
was
or you're talking about the suicide thing, right?
no, I'm talking about this on the 15th, when he
Okay.
said I was framing him as a sex pest.
Well,
And
in a
what's it?
big way, you were. You specifically said, uh, I don't have it up anymore. But you did say he was pressuring you into sexual acts, and that he wanted to he wanted to have physical sex with you, and that you were being pressured into it, and it was a boundary you weren't wanting to cross. But it seemed like from the sexting at the very least that you guys were absolutely both consensually engaging in these arguments, or I mean in these sexting arrangements, and you were
Mhm.
expressing that you wanted to, like, I don't want to quote anything, but like
Mhm.
talking about wanting his dick and stuff.
So
It's
I would
seems
say,
pretty explicit.
so when I made that post, I said he was pressuring me to do things physically with people that I wasn't comfortable with. I was talking about when he was like wanting to punish me for talking to Hunter about splitting up because he wanted me to be more strategic. And he like wanted me to go do something physical with someone and for me to film it. That's not something I was
As
super
a
comfortable with.
punishment, right?
As a punishment, yeah. Um, and he during our relationship, when we were still in a relationship, he was wanting me to go and do things with people. I ended up having to call him and talk through that with him, because I was like, I think, there he Hunter deserves respect here, and I'm not going to be cheating on him. um and I don't think that that doesn't align with my ethics, but it's not something that I messaged to him because I knew he was going to be mad about it and I wanted to actually have a conversation. um so there was like those types of things were the things that I felt he was pressuring me into physically. I never felt like he was pressuring me into anything physically with him. I felt like he just was pressuring me into things physically with other people that I wasn't ready for, and it was making me feel uncomfortable. um in terms of doing stuff with him, I genuinely, and maybe this is just how I sext, I guess. But I do feel like even if you're like, I want this or something like that, that's all in the confines of the sexting, right? Like, just saying that and doing it are two very different things. And I think that kind of comes with the territory of sexting. Like, I feel like it would be weird if you were sexting and you were like, if it wasn't, I would do A, B, and C. Like, that's kind of weird, right? Like, if someone's okay with you sexting, you're gonna say stuff like that. I don't think that's tantamount to crossing a physical boundary, which was the boundary that we had in place.
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, I mean nobody likes being tutored through sex if they've already done it 50 times in their life. I mean that was one of the complaints you had. Yeah.
What do you
Was
mean?
that you were with one type of guy. Um, this whole drama is really hard to navigate because I don't want to wrap you into like shitting on Hunter, but I feel like a lot of the things that you said in DMs,
Mhm,
whether or not you were with Hunter and you were working within the bounds of your relationship, was very demeaning to him specifically.
mhm,
Because you were talking about your lack of satisfaction with your current sex life
mhm.
and like talking
Um,
about a fantasy or like a fantasy of another ideal sex life.
so I think, this is where it gets weird because I feel like if you are talking to someone, I believe that you can have those conversations with people, especially when you're considering something like a separation, right? Um, I don't think it's immoral to be expressing things about your own situation. Um, I think, there was probably more context to that because he was asking more for, I don't even remember the exact context. I think he was asking either more for reasons why I was considering the separation in the first place, which I also had specified that I had been considering for like a year and a half. And then like either that or he was asking about um I believe that was the context. I might be wrong. Um, but
Well, it
I
seemed
mean,
like earlier when you were talking to specifically Tom in this stream that you were talking about how you felt like you were being pressured by him in a lot of ways, especially with engaging with like certain types of like sexual behaviors, not just physical ones. And it feels like,
what do you mean
um,
not just physical ones?
I mean, in how you were engaging in
Like sending
text.
him the video, so where he says like, hey, I was getting head, you should have engaged with me, and you say, well, is this
I was
better?
fine with
You
that.
made it sound like you were getting pressured into sending him that video.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like, even from what you were saying before, it doesn't sound like you were fine with that. It sounded like you felt to me, it sounded like somebody who was explaining to Tom
Mhm.
coercion.
So the reason that I had that, as I said, this was the 15th, so I had been doing this stuff for like 2 weeks, right? So I already was kind of getting comfortable with like the thing that kind of threw me off was it wasn't the sexual engagement. It was the fact that it was kind of supposed to be a business type relationship and he never asked for sex or sexual he never really asked for sexual stuff before. So it seemed strange to me. It's not like I felt like I was being exploited or anything in that regard. I more just was like, this is a weird dynamic because it doesn't seem right to me that it's mixing business and using sex as a commodity to exchange for, business advice. It just felt a little odd. Um, that's kind of where I was coming. Does that make sense?
Um,
Yeah, what was you said
eh,
coercion. What was the coercive aspect, Sick? Because you didn't just say like pushy
when people
or.
when she talks about how she's feeling pressured and he's being really demanding and he's making these requests, and like the reason he even posted the video was because she didn't comply with his caress. She's just describing coercion.
I do think that that's the case. I'm not
But
backing
that,
down
but
from
that,
it.
but that's what I'm saying. That's directly antithetical with what you were saying before. Is that like in this entire thing, you're not just saying that Kingston is a scumbag for doing what he does. You're painting
Mhm,
him as this like abuser in this situation, and that you're sort of like this unwilling participant because you didn't know better, or you were just being pressured the entire time. And these are not things that you would engage with
mhm.
if it were like another person making these same like requests or appeals.
So I genuinely don't know how else I could frame why he would drop all of what he did other than it being coercion. Like, so I know that I didn't leak anything. So I know that like any evidence that he thinks he has wouldn't be enough to do something that insane.
I like there's just no way. There's no evidence that he could have, because it never happened, that would allow for there to be this like probability that it was me. That like would anyway make it okay to do what he did. Also, the way that like he censored things, I think it wasn't like he was giving a lot of extraneous information, and then on top of that, he could have gotten the same message across by like even with censoring things much to a greater degree. So it seemed to me that it was very trying to be very humiliating to me, and honestly like a embarrassment pleasure.
Yeah,
Which
just touching on the video.
coercive.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I need to straighten something out real quick on that
wait.
topic. Hold on, because so when we say coercion, we're talking about something that's being like threatened against her or threatened to be taken away.
Right,
I'm missing what is
not
the
coercion. Yes, the response is not coercion without the threat beforehand anyways.
That's what I'm asking.
Trying to get at.
What is the threat?
So I mean, it might not be necessarily. Maybe I used the word coercion when I shouldn't have. I don't know.
Well, so Sick, you said that you already thought she was describing coercion before she said coercion. So what did you think the threat was?
Well, okay. What I'm saying is threats can be coercive. I don't think the video was coercive. I think that was a shitty response on his end. Probably, in my opinion,
what is the threat? That's what I'm asking. What is
I'm not saying he ever threatened the video. I'm saying earlier when she was describing how she felt pressured into engaging with him, that is what I'm describing as coercion. I don't think what she's describing. I don't think what she's describing about the video is coercive.
Okay.
And to be honest, I just
what I would say in response to that would be that with this type of industry, right? There's maybe this is just because I don't know enough, but I always have a fear that you are going to be taken advantage of, and you need someone who knows the industry enough to like know how to kind of do it safely. So if I was going to stay in it, it is scary to me for him to just be like, I'm not doing this anymore, and to just leave as like someone giving advice. And that is something that he had threatened multiple times.
He threatened to stop talking to you?
Yes. Yeah.
And what was he threatening to stop talking to you over?
Me not obeying well enough.
Okay.
Honestly, that's
okay. So you are claiming some level of coercion, and
yeah.
Okay.
That seems to play out in the messages too, right?
In messages she has provided or messages that he has provided?
I'm not sure who's provided what at this point.
Well, I want to know that.
Doctor.
Wait, I want to know that because the problem is that everything, if you're saying there's stuff in what he has shown that shows that he is being coercive, then that's fine. We can go back and look. But the problem is that if you've provided anything, or if you haven't, one, I'd like to see it. But two, for what you have provided, you've also taken off of Twitter and everywhere else too.
So I think in the screenshots that Star released, there's evidence of it if you want to check it out. He also made a tweet just a little bit ago saying he was being manipulative. And I guess I don't know how fine of a line there is between manipulation and coercion, but I feel like there's a pretty heavy overlap there. And I would assume that level of manipulation is kind of that he was referring to is what I would consider coercion, right?
Okay. We kind of skipped over something that I kind of wanted to talk about. We can get back to this if you really care about it, but the video, okay? You were talking about how like he did a really shitty job of censoring it, right? And apparently there was 2 versions of the video. I believe I only have the first version, so I don't even know what the second one looks like. Would you still say that the second one shows what you consider to be a revenge porn?
So looking at Texas law, from my understanding, it says that anyone, even if it's showing sexual act, and it's not showing all of it, but just like someone in a sexual act without their consent is considered revenge porn. So even if it's blurred, it's still considered revenge porn if they're in a sexual act, which I think he must have just missed or forgotten about, because that definitely was in there.
Okay. I just have a little request then. Will you say on stream that you disavow all streamers who didn't black out the photos of the second draft of the video and thought it was fine to air?
I don't like making blanket statements like that. Obviously, I wish people wouldn't do that.
Well,
but
but if it qualifies and anybody aired it, they would be doing the same thing. You would have to make that statement. If the video is revenge porn, anybody screen sharing the video is therefore spreading revenge porn. No?
Yeah, probably. And my only thing is that I think it's going to be a very different level of the intentionality is going to be very different. So I think that it was
you consider it revenge porn. If you consider it revenge porn, and Texas law considers it revenge porn, by the way, I consider it revenge porn. I don't know that it matters whether or not I was showing revenge porn for the sake of helping you out or hurting you, because it's still putting it out there.
Again, it's going to be difference between
photo.
legal versus how it's making, I guess, me feel. I think you're probably alluding to Stardust, right?
I
would never.
I did want to bring this up. I don't want to go backwards, but I just did pull up the tweet from King where he says, the difference between me, Hunter, and Carissa is that I'm comfortable in my truth. Yes, I was talking to a married woman. Yes, I was super manipulative with her and always made sure she knew that if she disobeyed me, I might erase her number. I own up to who I am, all parts. So that is what Carissa was saying just a minute ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Well, I mean, hey, I would rather it come from the horse's mouth because it lends credibility to your story. But honestly, the only reason I actually trust that this happened and I can trust it coming out of Kingston's mouth is because every time he shows evidence, especially when people ask for him to provide greater context, it only seems to prove his narrative. And by the way, it's very possible for your guys' narrative and his to exist at the same time, save for all the contradictions. But Kingston has been pretty open this entire time, and it's kind of shitty to think about because in a way, even though he's such a scummy person, he's been very forward with the bad things that he's done, the good things that he's done. And one of the problems that I had was with you weaponizing the suicide. Now, you might disagree with the characterization weaponizing, but he says, because you brought up feeling genuinely suicidal, he says, after you say you can't communicate with him anymore because he's explaining why he posted the video, he says, okay, well, just promise me you won't commit suicide. You owe me that at least. We can end on that. And then you bring in the conditionality that I understand your argument about the whole like trust thing. To me, that's cope because you bring in the conditions. Well, if you want me to not commit suicide, post this tweet saying that you misunderstood
That's not what I said. If I said if you want me to,
I can give you the actual. Yeah, I can read off the actual text.
Because in that framework, I do think that is threatening in what you said, but that's not what I said.
So you say, I don't think I can continue to communicate. Good luck. He says, the feeling is mutual. Just promise not to do what you said you were considering. We can end on that. You owe that much to me. And then you say, you don't trust me, so why would it matter? If you trust me, tweet that there were communications and you shouldn't have released the video, and I'll promise you, there's nothing you can lose from that. And to me...
and then keep on reading. Because then he said, you're not going to bull me into it, and then I explain it further, right?
Wait. I just want to point out, that conversation doesn't have to continue for that text to exist the way that it does.
That's fair. That could come off as being manipulative, and I can understand that. I do feel like providing further clarification, which is what I did. And obviously he did not release the tweet before I provided further clarification. So I think me providing for further clarification also needs to be talked about as well, right? It's not like I coerced him into it with that tweet, right? Or that message.
No, but you are, even with the clarification. People might have, here's the problem, is that
Mhm,
you might genuinely feel suicidal. And you
mhm,
might honestly have like an intention behind why you're putting a conditionality on the
mhm.
promise, right? But the
Yeah.
problem is that that promise is to not commit suicide, which means that absent him sending the tweet, the idea is that the threat of you committing suicide still exists. So it doesn't actually matter what your explanation is for
Mhm.
explaining trust, because the problem is that without that promise, the
Mhm.
idea is that you're still left to being in this suicidal state because of him.
So my argument with that would be if he doesn't trust me, saying that I'm not, I didn't leak anything, then why would he trust me that me promising that I wasn't suicidal would mean anything and would take me out of that suicidal state? It doesn't make sense to me. So to
Okay.
me, I'm like, why would you even want something like that? Why would you even trust me on something like that? Because I was kind of calling him out on his bullshit. I genuinely don't feel like there was anything that he received to the effect of anything being leaked, because I know for a fact I didn't leak anything.
Um
And so at least it's nothing that could have even been um, probable enough that it was me, right?
Well, it depends. Why was he saying that you broke his trust, and and why were you assuming that he wouldn't trust you anymore? Because he said like you broke a promise and stuff like that. What is that?
He said that was just me ghosting him, and I literally have a screenshot of that because I sent it to. I will give me 1 second. I'm sharing it with you now.
Tom, can you send it my way as well? Is that
Yeah,
fine, Carissa?
I'm just sending it to. Yeah, hold on. Let me see.
Can I ask a quick question? Stardust called out Kingston when he showed that initial screenshot about the suicide. Did you see his text regarding that, where he was saying that you were manipulating him with suicide or threatening him with suicide?
Yeah, and he framed it as me doing that to take the video down, which was false. So I don't even understand your framing that the more that he releases, the more it approves what he says,
Yeah,
which is not
well,
true. There's many lies he's been caught in here.
I'm fine with that being the case, because little incorrect or little mistakes
What?
like that is fine. Well,
Okay.
let me just say, little mistakes like that are fine, because what he was talking about with you threatening suicide, it wasn't in reference to the video, it was in reference to posting a tweet. So even if you disagree with the
No,
narrative
but he
about whether or not you
specifically
were
said the
threatening.
video.
Yes,
He
I know, but
specifically said the video.
that's what I'm saying, is that in the evidence he showed, he could have misremembered that conversation. But the point
No,
was that he showed the evidence anyways, and then he was willing to go along with what was in the uh in the text messages anyways.
I feel like that's cope from you. I'm sorry.
That's
I feel
fine.
like we could say the same thing about framing it and the stuff that I released of being like my intention of releasing that was showing that I was not interested in him in the first 2 weeks, and that it was
What
only after he had specifically requested it that I started going further than that business interaction. So I feel like you're not providing me the same amount of charitability of someone who literally committed revenge porn and also lied about stuff. But that's fine.
well, just because he committed revenge porn doesn't mean he lied.
I
Yeah,
Those are two
did.
unrelated things.
He
yeah,
literally
it's
did.
a little bit. Well,
I'm
He
not
said
so
saying
that.
he didn't post revenge porn. I'm saying
No, no,
that
no. I'm
that has no
saying he
bearing on
lied.
his truth.
He lied about many things, but the biggest thing that I'm saying is initially he lied that that was because I took the video down. That he took the video down because I had threatened suicide, which is just flat out not true. It was like hours difference. between him taking the video down and
Yeah, I have to say that, like, I think from our perspective, we're getting a lot of different things mixed up because we weren't there for a lot of this, and so it's hard for us to piece everything
I don't
back
think I'm getting
together
anything
after the
mixed up.
fact. But I think him him getting stuff mixed up, like what you're suggesting, that's hard to believe. Like
Yeah.
it sounded, because he did post the info, and
Then
it
we'd have
seemed
to
like he was
impeach
just
Hunter and
mischaracterizing the information.
if that's the case, though, we'd have to impeach Hunter and Carissa on a number of things. For instance, like I brought up earlier, saying that she never expressed sexual interest in anybody until after they split up, when he's asking people to go use his text, or I mean his tweet, posting that they were divorced as a
You're the
reference
one.
point.
You're the one who initially was saying that you made the claim that everything that he was saying, he was providing more evidence for, and it clarified it and supported his narrative. The only reason I brought up the fact that he was lying is because that just was not true. So I'm not saying that there were no inconsistencies on our part on an accidental level, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying that your narrative is wrong in the fact that he is not the one who's coming out looking like everything is valid from all angles of this, right?
Yeah, but he's saying is that, hold on, wait, no, hold on,
No,
wait,
she's
no,
attacking me.
hold
One
on.
second.
I
I know
understand.
you're
I'm
straight.
trying to clarify this. Carissa, when you say that you're doing this on an accidental level, he's saying that he can't believe that you're doing it on an accidental level if we're not allowed to believe that Kingston is doing on an accidental level. That if there's like mix-ups and they do something accidental, if he's gonna believe that you're doing something accidentally, then he has to also believe that he's doing something accidentally. He has to
that's not narrative. That's not what I'm saying. Him lying about this is not my problem with him.
But the problem is that we're talking about but the problem is that we're either talking about one lie or one mistake on his end, which, by the way, I think he's made plenty of mistakes, but it's how he approached the situation, not necessarily in what he says. But the problem
how
is
he
that
approached the situation and just
hold on.
dropping the video.
Even if we're to say he intentionally lied about the tweet where he was saying you threatened suicide over taking down the video, that would be one lie. If we're not giving you guys that same charitability, we're also not going to give him, then we would have to say on a number of things you
I'm
guys
not
have
asking
also
you
explicitly
not to
lied.
give him charitability. I'm saying that I'm asking you why you're not giving us the charitability you're willing to give him. That's what I'm asking.
Well,
I'm fine with giving him the charitability there. That's fine. I think it might be a little suspicious there. I'm not the one saying that his big fuck up is that he's lying. You're the one saying that our big fuck up is that there are some inconsistencies that have happened in like the heat of the situation. But you are saying that he's the one who is backing everything up. I'm just pushing back on that. That's all.
Okay. Yeah, I guess part of the problem here is that I am going to be grilling you, and that just
That's
because
fine.
I'm grilling you doesn't mean I don't believe everything you're saying. There are just some things where it like conflicts earlier statements, and I have to address that.
But the
And
thing is, come and say that everything he's saying is consistent. That just seems
yeah, I
weird.
mean, it's wrong for me to say like as if he's this unimpeachable character. Kingston absolutely is not. I'm just saying when he provides evidence,
You were not saying you were not saying that he was like blameless. You were saying specifically that the evidence that he provided backed up the narrative that he would always say initially, which has just not been the case. I gave you an example, and then you're like, oh, well, you guys did that too. And I'm like, that's fine. That's whataboutism. You were literally saying something. I called you out on it. And then now you're just being like, oh, well, I'm grilling you, so it's fine. Do you understand what I'm saying here? I'm just pushing back against you a little bit when you're saying stuff like this because it seems a little weird. It's very obvious to me that there are inconsistencies and he is backpedaling. Also, another thing is from what Stardust had posted, he had asked her not to cover anything about the suicidality situation. But then after the stream, he was like, "Why didn't you cover this?" So there was like
right because she was making conclusions from evidence that clearly showed that how do I say it? There were times in that stream where there was further evidence that was already provided by you and or Kingston that would explain a situation where he actually wasn't being a manipulator, or it would actually show that you were interested or feeding into his requests, and she would cut that evidence out. There was a very explicit engagement where you sent him a photo after he said some. I can't remember what the fucking exact text was, but she cut off the text at his text and then didn't show after he sent some message that you sent a photo in response to him saying, "Hey, does this help?"
So that again, that goes back to the initial thing where he provided those messages multiple days ago that kind of put that in context. That might have not have been in the thing that Stardust had done. But again, the point there that she was making wasn't that and she specifically said that I wasn't scared of him physically. Her point with that was that there had been no physical, or there had been no interest like on a sexting level before that date. That was that he was the one who brought that up.
Okay. Well, you said that I wasn't lending you guys a certain amount of charitability that I was giving Kingston, right?
Yes.
Do you have anything that proves that Kingston lied in regards to why he took down the video? Like is there any way to disprove the claim that you took down or he took down the video as a threat of your suicide? Or due to you threatening suicide on him? Is there any way to disprove that?
So I have all of the screenshots here. Wait, but I think you already have that, but it just would be the timestamp.
I may or may not. It depends because everything's kind of scattered right now.
The screenshot.
I want something that shows that. So she is saying Kingston lied about claiming that the reason he took down the video was because Carissa threatened suicide, right? I want something that disproves that shows some other intention behind why he took down the video.
Okay. So
all I can say is that he took down the video before that conversation happened. That's all I can say. I mean, I don't know what else I can try to give you the timestamps with that.
Wait, I'm sorry. So in the DMs that we have, she's saying that she's suicidal, and then they start talking about him making a post. When she says I'm suicidal, the video's already down by then.
Yes.
So
so we need stuff before then, is what I'm saying.
So you're questioning that.
Why?
Well, I'm just saying the problem that I'm having is you want me to have charitability for you guys, and I feel like in some respects I do, but the problem is that like Kingston is providing all the evidence, and I don't know how to wrap it around your guys' brain that's sort of the problem, is that he's the only one showing everything, so he gets all the narrative control. So if you guys want some actual control over this situation, frankly, coming on a stream and talking to people only does so much. You actually need something that backs up the things that you're saying, and not having somebody like Stardust present it, because the way she presented it just makes it seem like a hit piece on Kingston and not some fair analysis of the situation.
All right, I'm getting screenshots with the dates for you, so give me one sec.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I know I'm really aggressive. It's just it's kind of frustrating because I understand why you would be upset with me, because it does seem like I'm not lending you guys charitability, but it's hard because a lot of what we have to do is go off of your guys' words, and there's contradictions in that. And what really helps elucidate everybody, not just me, not just Tom, not just Chud or anybody else, is just having that piece of evidence that proves what you're saying.
I gotcha. Let's see. All right, here we go. I can't get into the one chat, so I'm just sending it to Tom. If you want to screen share it, it's fine. Give me 1 second. Hold on. I'm looking for the.
Make sure. How do I say? Oh, these are screenshots. Okay. I thought you were gonna be scrolling on like a screen share or something. I was getting nervous.
Here we go. All right, I am sending it to you, Tom.
Yeah, I currently have the first one that you sent me up on the screen.
I resent it just
Okay, so
with the timestamps.
that one.
So that
Oh,
this is the first one is showing that he deleted it.
okay.
Um,
So this is the first one. Maybe you didn't say anything you meant to be harmful, but you did fuck me when you left me there to sit and wonder if you did or not. And then
that's him talking about me ghosting him, which is why what he's framing is the breach of trust.
okay. And then this one, to make sure you're not involved, I guess I'm still a sucker for girls with nice butts. You said thank you. I'm genuinely considering killing myself. So that's where this conversation starts.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's bro. I feel like Carissa. Why didn't you just show this?
I mean, that's
I mean,
the
it
thing.
doesn't really change the like suicide thing, but it does change the video thing. It does like
I
yes,
know.
yes, it directly
He is
contradicts that.
lying. Yep.
Right, for that. Yes. But that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of times like people just need the proof in their hands, and it feels like in a lot of ways it's not just you, by the way. Hunter's doing this too, where it's like you guys are getting kind of butthurt because people aren't like immediately believing you, but it's really hard to fight when you delete your Twitter post, so you're essentially removing yourself from the discourse, and then all we're left is Hunter, who is just fumbling the bag in so many ways and making cuck jokes left and right on Twitter, and then Kingston, who is willing to put out screenshots to prove the things that he's saying when he's being challenged on it.
Wait, but
And
it was sick that this is what I was talking about earlier, is that, like, yes, he's putting stuff out, but it never actually proves what he's saying. He's very selective in what he's putting out, and every time he puts out more information, it just gives us more questions every single time. He is being
Well,
uber selective in what he puts out.
because nobody wants part of the story, and no offense, but we're not going to be satisfied until we see every single engagement between Carissa and Kingston, and that's just unreasonable. Okay,
yeah,
everybody's always going to have more and more and more questions. I'm
Yes,
not surprised that that's the case. I actually do think the evidence Kingston provides proves a lot of the narrative that he's saying, and again, I will say it is possible he made a mistake in saying that he in accusing you of threatening suicide to take down the video, but it's also very possible, given that we know that he didn't take down the video because of you threatening suicide, that he did just outright lie about that, right?
again, it's like a 3-hour difference. So I don't know if I feel like it would be very hard to have him frame that as like a mistake, but
Well, I'm just saying because I can't see inside Kingston's head.
that's very true. It's possible. I do think he's intelligent, though. I don't.
Yeah, I don't think he's a dumbass. One thing I will say, because he was like Stardust was saying in response to Kingston, though, that she did not see you threatening suicide. She didn't feel like she ever saw that from you. Now, she might have been saying specifically in regards to the video, but obviously, what the evidence Kingston is showing is that you're threatening suicide to post the tweet saying there were miscommunications between the both of you.
I think up
And
to interpretation whether that's threatening or not, or if
well,
what
I'm saying this is his
he's saying is
interpretation of the.
catching him in a lie of whether he trusts me or not.
Okay, I guess my question is, Stardust is saying with greater context, she doesn't feel like you ever threatened suicide.
Yeah.
To me and to a lot of other people, it's not questionable whether or not you did, even if you
Okay.
genuinely did feel suicidal. I'm curious, how much of the text messages did Star see um, in that like conversation between you and Kingston?
I'm not. Um, she got it from a cliff. I think she saw all of them.
You're saying she got it from somebody else, so you don't know.
Oh, okay. Damn. So she wasn't lying about having a source. Well, that's fucking stupid. Hey, my theory behind Stardust was that she was being protective of you and calling you source without naming you, um, because it seemed like you wanted to be removed from the discourse entirely.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I only have one other question. Actually, I might have already asked it. Let me go over real quick. Oh yeah, it was just that that guy is totally a pimp. That's what he did functionally. Okay. First of all, you are, well, I mean, I don't want to say are, but if I look up the definition of prostitute, a person, in particular a woman, I don't know why we have to make that distinction, who engages in sexual activity for payment. And then pimp is somebody who like gathers clientele for a prostitute and takes part in their earnings in return. That is the relationship Kingston was trying to develop with you. You don't need any of the abuse, you don't need any coercion, you don't need any of the pressure for him to be your pimp. That was explicitly the relationship you guys were like developing, and that might feel demeaning, but somebody like a yes, like a porn producer, they would necessarily be like a pimp for their actors.
I mean, again, it depends on how you define stuff. Typically, prostitution is considered illegal, and nothing that happened was illegal. So I think there's importance of distinction there. And then on top of that, I think there's also a level of submission that usually happens with a prostitute and a pimp that he was very mad he could not get from me. Um, and so I think there's that as well. But maybe that's what he had wanted. That's fair.
Okay.
Yes, like a pimp is
I'm
somebody's boss, and a producer is not. It's like there are a lot of distinctions between the two, but there is evidence to say that that's what he wanted anyways. Like one,
I mean,
because Sick he doesn't make a distinction between a pimp and a porn producer. But even if we say like Sick is wrong on that, we can still say maybe that's what Kingston was looking for one way or the other. It's possible the way that he was talking about things.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna get out of here because I can't do this all night. But Carissa, are you fine with Tom like releasing those screenshots you showed with like just that added little
Yeah.
bit of context on that
Oh,
conversation?
it's on my screen.
Okay. Well, I mean, just like the actual link to the screenshot,
Oh,
not
you mean
it being
sending
tied
you
to
the
your fucking
screenshots?
yeah,
Yeah,
because
sure.
because I don't want to see it on the VOD. I want the file so
I
that way
want
it
my
can be
face
posted.
next to it.
Okay,
Like
I can do
Getty
that.
Images, Tomfoolery show.
I
I'm
covered
just
you.
kidding.
I covered you in a pimp outfit on my stream yesterday, so I'll put that next to it. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'll send it to you.
Okay. Carissa, thank you for
Yeah.
talking to me.
Yeah. Sure.
You're quite frustrating to talk to on certain points. Um,
I'm good.
but regardless, I appreciate talking to you nonetheless. I think you've engaged with a lot more heat than the other person involved in this situation, who's not Kingston, and I commend you for trying to do this. I don't know if it's going to work out in your favor, but I commend you for trying to do the PR tour, even though I think it's a bad move every time.
Hey, well, I will see. I agree. It's
I mean, I think
I
this has been insanely enlightening. I think that we've filled up a lot of holes. It's answered a lot of questions that I had. At least this has been very, very enlightening from my side, and I think it's definitely helped you from what I've seen so far.
awesome. That's awesome. That's great. Hopefully, we'll
Bye,
see.
guys.
It's just
Wait a
a
sec.
little bit of a risk, but
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, Kingston kind of like started all of this, and then now has been like adjacent to it the entire time, where there's so many people who would love to be able to talk to him and grill him like this, and he's just kind of like, oh yeah, I don't want to start any more crap. But it's like, bro, you already did this. Like, you kind of have to pay the consequences for it now, but you're kind of trying to like be a little bit too hands off. And I understand a lot of that's him trying to respect you guys, but it's not helpful to you guys. He, like, if he could actually go on and answer for a lot of this stuff, I think he would look really bad if he did.
Possibly, yeah.
I sent you another DM also.
Okay, let me see. 1 second. Oh yeah, Star can jump on. I feel bad because she asked to talk to me earlier, and
Okay.
I initially wasn't going to, but yeah, she can jump on. That's fine.
Okay. What were you about to say?
I don't remember.
We're talking about Kingston not jumping on, and maybe it's out of
yeah.
respect for you, or what?
I don't know. I think he's framing a lot of things out of respect for me, and I mean, I'm not going to discredit that it's a possibility, but also at the same time, I genuinely don't really know where he's coming from right now. I feel like he can seem very reasonable when he's talking to people too. So I don't know if it would help or hurt him or his perspective with this.
I mean, you said that you guys, obviously you have more DMs than this. Was it not like your first question? Like, why the hell did you do this? Like, what made you just go post all this info out of nowhere?
I just assumed it was because I ghosted him. That was my assumption. And that was like my first DM after on Friday morning when I found it. I was like, I'm really sorry I ghosted you. Like, can you just call me, please? Because I initially just tried calling him and he didn't answer.
I mean, he said that in his video, you said that you haven't really watched his video. In his video, he says, somebody told me something, and so now I feel like I have to do this because they're spreading lies about me. And that's his whole, like, but he doesn't tell us what that is, what the lies are. He just comes off very paranoid, like he's trying to get out ahead of a narrative and post the info before you guys put out some sort of smear campaign on him. And it seems like that's like a very specific thing for him to think that, and he doesn't show us why he thinks that. And so yeah, from like, you're assuming that he did this because he ghosted you, but from his point of view, he's saying no, he, like, you guys were about to out him and make him look really bad, and he had to do all this stuff.
That's the thing is, I don't even, why would he even do that though? Why would we even do that? Because it's very clear that we wanted things to remain anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, that's the issue here is I feel like he keeps claiming this, but he has yet to put out any evidence for that would point to a reason why he believes this, right? If he believes that if he said somebody came to him and said somebody was saying something about you on this side, which is specifically what he said in his video, he should have the evidence for that, and he should have no problem posting that. Otherwise, everything else in this points to me logically that it makes no sense. Carissa acknowledges that this is supposed to be anonymous, right? We know that like Hunter, or at least from my opinion, from what I saw, it looked like Hunter was looped in, and Carissa was going to Hunter for approval before doing anything, right? So I have yet to see any evidence from Kingston to prove his point there.
Well, I don't mean to, like, I know a ton of people are upset with me saying that I'm running a ton of defense, but like, this has been my whole thing the entire time, is I don't even care what Carissa and Hunter say about this. If it's inconsistent or something like that, this guy just decided to out their lives for no reason. It's like if somebody doxes you and you say, no, that's not my real name, they're lying, that's not really my real name. And then afterwards, everybody's like, oh my goodness, you lied, and now you're discrediting that person and acting like that's not your real name, when really they told the truth about what your real name was. It's like, why should they have to tell you their real freaking name? Like, it's supposed to be private information. They have no obligation to tell you their real name here. And that's what I feel like's happening here, where there's a bunch of information that from you guys' standpoint was meant to be private. It was never supposed to be public, and then now it's made public, and everybody's upset that you're like that. Even if there were inconsistencies, I don't think I would even care, because it's not, you have no responsibility to give us private information that was never supposed to be public in the first place. Now you just want to, like, generally you would just want to do some sort of damage control to clear up what all they put out and all the problems it's causing you.
Right. Yeah.
Stardust, did you have questions?
Not at this moment in time, because I think I have been asking Carissa questions, like, and stuff. But it's weird. Carissa's been pretty upfront and pretty forward about answering my questions. The difference is, like, when I talked to Kingston, he was not. He was not very upfront about answering questions. He would type out like full novels, to while still kind of beating around the bush with things. And so, that kind of like made it hard for me to really be sympathetic towards his side. One, because he kind of did start all of this shit to begin with. And two, he was just not being very forthcoming. But that's not to say, like, I don't have my criticisms. I think Hunter probably didn't handle this like the best way to begin with. I thought the way that Hunter handled this to begin with was like, just the opposite of everything that I would have done. And while I'm like sympathetic towards like Carissa's like position, I've been pretty openly anti-sex work myself, right? And so it's this whole I know that sick like just tweeted at me recently saying that I like did a hit piece on Kingston. It's really not the case. I just presented the information that was given to me, and what it looked like to me, and what what my speculations, like what exactly backed up my speculations. I'm not saying I'm right on everything. I could be wrong. In fact, now after a day of thinking on things, I do think I might be wrong on the idea that Kingston like caught feelings, because my boyfriend was saying to me it looks like he was using this to manipulate, which is possible, right? But like just looking at the DMs between Carissa and Kingston, like it like is very blatant that this dude like doesn't give a shit about her. She's talking about having a UTI, and this guy is like, oh, you're not being submissive enough. Like I'll tell you guys, when you have a UTI, like you're not having, you're like, for me, I'm not having sex, like, especially if you're following, you just get over the UTI, you get a bunch of other things like strep throat, like, holy fuck. And his thing is, oh, you're not being submissive enough. Really? Like, that in itself is just blatantly shows to me that he just really doesn't care what you're going through. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me get just a second, guys. Let me just send a video of me blasting myself while I have a UTI and I'm like pissing blood or something, like Jesus Christ,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
I think
I want to be a little bit more charitable to him. It sounds like he's putting effort and time into this, and he's upset that you're not putting effort and time into this as well, and he doesn't want his work and his time to go to just go out the window, go right in the trash. And so he seems to be trying to hold you to a timeline, hold you responsible. Also, he wants you to have work ethic. He wants you to be able to make it in the business. Like, there's a lot more to it than just like being submissive. It's also like he's got skin in the game here, right?
And that's kind of where it was weird for me, because I was seeing it from that perspective. But then there were things that I'm like, the punishment stuff, I'm like, that's just weird. So
Yeah.
there was just like both of those where I'm like, I appreciated him kind of trying to hold me to, following people and doing all of that. But then on the other side of it, I was like, this is just, I don't feel like this is normal,
So when he says, you ghosted me, so I ghosted you back, did you, because your response was submission. Your response was, sorry, that won't happen again, blah, blah, blah. But did you not think to say, like, bro, like, I'm busy sometimes. Like, I'm not always going to answer you. Like, you can't be so clingy.
That's the weird thing is I wasn't even ghosting him. He was like specifically talking like ghosting sexually. That was the whole situation where
Oh.
he was mad at me for not engaging with him sexually. I responded and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. This is a bad time." And that's what he framed as ghosting. But it wasn't. It just was me not engaging with him.
And did you know that that's what he was trying to get from you in the moment and just trying to like
No.
back off?
I know. It's not. I didn't know that. And that, I think, looking back more, it's clear that that was like really when I started noticing a lot more controlling and kind of manipulation. But like that was like the first time anything like that had happened, I felt like. So I kind of was assuming that I had ghosted him, and then I like looked back and like, wait a second, like I didn't guess. So I was genuinely confused, and that's when he like talked about the quote unquote hoe code as well, which is where he was like, you need to be able to entertain me and other people, like commoditizing sex in that way, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and for the audience, I mean, I already have my issues with Kingston as well, and he's blocked me everywhere. So I haven't been able to see like all of the stuff that he's putting out, which is why like bringing Sick on here made sense, is because a lot of the pushback and the things that people have as far as their narratives go and crap like that, I don't even have a lot of that information because this guy blocked me. And so everywhere, all I have is the stuff that he put out in his initial video. Everything after that, I haven't seen any of this. So I was asking questions to like get a get a timeline, get information on like your side of things. But as far as like, yes, a lot of pushback, like I had already spoken to Sick and kind of agreed to let him come on and do all of that.
That makes sense. That's good.
Okay. But yeah, that's all I got. Sorry, I didn't see your DMs. Oh wait, hold on. There is one more person. There's.
Oh, did you send me? Hold on. Oh no, not that one.
No.
Not that one. No.
He says he'll be nice.
And
I can moderate him. I mean, I'm here. Because I think there's a whole, the only reason I think that would be valuable is because there's a whole other community of people that neither me nor Sick are going to represent in any way, that are all left very much in the dark because nobody's responding to them at all.
okay, that's fine, but I might, it's not that I don't want pushback, it's just there's a level, I feel like there needs to be a level of respect, and I don't know. But go ahead if that's fine.
Okay. I told him.
I'm gonna dip, but let me know if you guys need anything. Thanks
all
for
right,
having
thank
me.
you, Stardust.
See ya.
Oh, I just moved the waiting room instead of him. Hello? BPF?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Not great.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Yeah, I had a couple of questions for Carissa.
Mhm.
So, in what world
do you think that it's a great idea to break up your family and have all of this happen and set up gangbangs with other dudes? Why do you think that's a good idea?
Oh man. um so I think there's a lot involved in terms of all of this, and I don't think that is as enmeshed as you believe it is.
Well, I mean, you have children and a husband, and you have duties to your children and to your husband. At what point did you think, hey, I'll just wreck the whole family and set up gangbangs with dudes? That's fucking bizarre.
I mean, there's a lot of questions leading into that. Do you think that any of this stuff led to your family breaking up, Carissa?
No, I don't. So I don't believe so. We had been talking about separating for a while, for honestly a pretty long period of time. Um I think there I think anytime you try something new, there's always going to be some effect on any future decisions. There's always like a butterfly effect there. Um
Well, whose idea was it to begin opening up the relationship, and whose idea was it to get into the sex work to begin with? For some reason, I just got a gut feeling that's not Hunter's avenue.
yeah, it was more my idea.
And
Yeah,
do you think
yeah, it
that
was.
was like a road to you guys breaking up at all?
No, I think it would have happened regardless. I think it should have happened regardless.
Yeah, but Hunter wouldn't be doing. He wouldn't have been doing cam work if you. I mean, where you were pressuring him to do cam work, right?
No, that's not true.
So what happened with the cam work? You just like, hey,
He
we
never
should
did
just get in
camera.
it. What's
He
that?
did he did not ever do he never did cam work. He did some OnlyFans content with me, which is different.
Well, what's the difference?
I think that's what he's
Well,
referencing is the
one
OnlyFans
is
stuff.
live, the other one is not live.
So the same question just applied to the OnlyFans. Do you think, did you pressure
Okay,
him
so I
into
mean,
doing that at all?
yeah, yeah, it's the
No, I
same
did not.
difference.
There were multiple times where I specifically said, if this is not something you're comfortable with me doing or us doing, that is totally fine, and you have every right to veto it, and I'm fine with that. It's something that you need to be sure of 100%. And that was
But if a man wants to keep his family together, don't you think that he would maybe do something like that in order to appease you if you're putting pressure on him?
I never threatened anything about leaving him. It was never something that was um tied in any way. So there would
So
that was never
I
like a
think what he's asking is you're making it sound like there's a lot of problems leading up to this. And so if he wants to try to make things work, it sounds like if you make an ask of him, he's probably a lot more likely now to say yes, because he's going to do extra things that he maybe normally wouldn't to try to make the marriage work.
I see. No, I don't think that it was really involved really at all. Um there was not that level of pressure, and I don't think it was even related in any way to us considering separation.
Was it a way to like spice up the marriage or like something like that? Or
That was a benefit for sure. And I think that kind of, in a way, honestly, I think it helped in that regard. Um, but
Well, I mean,
yeah,
you can't possibly believe that ultimately this is going to be a good move for you. Like, you can't really believe that doing OnlyFans work and breaking up the family is not going to be something you regret. Like, you're going to regret that.
you combine them as if they're very related, and they're not.
Well, I don't think that you can differentiate the two. Like, how could you possibly differentiate, doing OnlyFans work with Hunter Avallone and thinking that that's not going to have ramifications on a relationship? That's hard for me to believe.
Anything that you do with a partner is going to have ramifications on a relationship.
Right.
Moving is going to have ramifications. There's like activities that you do together, hobbies are going to have there's many things that you're going to do that has ramifications. And honestly, like it in a way it honestly did hope in a lot of ways. But I think there were just ultimately differences that were separate from this that just kind of led to the separation in the first place.
Yeah. Well, how many kids do you have with Hunter?
I'd rather not really bring the kids into this.
Well, I'm not bringing the kids into it. I'm just asking a general question. Like I have 5 kids, right?
Yeah,
So how many
I'm just
kids do you
trying to
have?
keep this drama away from the kids as much as possible.
Right. Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is because like you realize your kids are going to grow up and they're going to have an explanation for why their mommy and daddy were on OnlyFans, right?
Was that a
Like you're going to
consideration for you guys, Carissa? Is like, did you guys
Yeah.
talk about what if like kids found this or anything like that?
So my perspective on that, number one, is we did take a lot of precautions for it to remain anonymous. And number two, I think a lot of the negative flashback that comes from this type of stuff is people who are incredibly judgy. So it's kind of like a
You mean like
self-fulfilling.
anti-sex work when you say
Yeah,
judging? Okay.
I wouldn't even say anti-sex work because I think you can be anti-sex work but also just be a compassionate person. But I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy when people are like, "Oh, why would you put kids in a scenario where they would be bullied while they're also bullying people for doing sex work in the first place?" So it's like a vicious cycle that just continues, and it's kind of shitty. So like obviously you're going to do what you can to mitigate that situation, and maybe that was a fault of mine that I miscalculated the risk assessment there of it getting out. Um but
I mean, you
I
guys you're super high profile. Like especially Avallone's super high profile.
mhm.
I mean, he was at one point at the top of his game. He was almost in that household name when he was
Yeah,
on the
so
conservative
his
side.
face was never on anything.
Yeah,
It-
okay, I get it, but like, do you think that his kids aren't gonna literally get tortured in school, and people aren't gonna be like, oh, hey, look, I'm watching your mom blow a dude. Like, do you think
no, I
how
don't
could
believe
you possibly think that's good?
I don't think that ever is going to actually happen. I think
How could
it's
you think that? How could you think that that'll never happen? Why would
I
you
think
think that Hunter
it's
Avallone,
too
who
hard.
has
You
more
gotta
in it?
let
It's
her
too
Yeah,
hard.
answer.
hang on. Let me just finish my point. Hunter
Okay.
Avallone has
You
more
asked me a
enemies.
question.
Yeah, I know, but I'm not finished with the question. Hunter Avallone has more enemies than, I mean, almost anybody that I've ever seen online. I mean, he's monumentally vilified by one full side of the spectrum.
Hmm.
Like I can't envision how you could possibly think that your kids won't be in school and they're not going to get tortured with this. How?
I don't think that there's much that I haven't even been able to find any of the leaked stuff. I think it's possible to find it, but I think it's very hard, and I think it's going to become increasingly difficult, especially when legal stuff gets involved. So I don't think this is something that like school age kids are going to be accessing, um, and in order to be like taunting my children with.
I mean, you don't think that's a little bit naive? I mean,
No,
people were posting links to the Twitter, which had all of the nude content, all the porn. It had all kinds of porn
I'm
content on
telling
it.
you that it is not very easy to find stuff even now. Um, I've looked for it. Other people have looked for it. I think it's going to be out there, but it's going to be increasingly difficult, especially as like litigation continues in terms of the revenge porn.
Okay. I just had two more things I wanted to ask, and then I'll get out of your hair. But I so the reason that this, of course, dumbstruck everybody is because Hunter's been cruising around talking about how he's living the trad life for the last year. As last year that he's been talking about that, have you guys been doing this kind of work?
this has only happened in like the past since in the middle of May, or no, I'm sorry. At the end of April is when we even just started talking about it. So, and even in some of the screenshots, I am like even hesitant about sending like nudes because I'm like, I need to double check that Hunter's okay with this. So it's very obvious that before that, this wasn't really happening at all. So I think it's fair to say that um, this is, again, only been happening, and there's proof that this has only been happening since the beginning of May.
Okay, well, the other allegation that I didn't hear touched on was that this guy that you were dealing with, he claimed that the reason that you were so adamant about it was due to monetary concerns. Is that really why you were pushing so hard towards doing that, or was there an alternative motive?
Um, so I do think that money was definitely a factor for sure. Um, yeah, I think that's true. I mean, kids, if you're investing in 401k, you have kids that are likely to go to college. The housing market right now is kind of crazy and inflation is pretty high. Even with like a relatively high salary and taxes, it's always helpful to have more money coming in.
Okay, right. Because the alternative to that also, he said in both kind of out of both sides of his mouth, the second side, he said, no, listen, the other big problem is that this chick, and I'm just quoting him, is super dick hungry. That's what he said. So, like, are both of those true, or is just one of those true?
So I would say that what I said about the money thing is what I'm saying. The thing about that, I guess, I think it's fair to say that like I didn't do any of those things that he wanted me to do physically, so I feel like that speaks within itself. Um, I think that was way overstated. I think if that were the case, he wouldn't be mad at me for not doing the things physically that he wanted me to do.
Okay. Are you still going to do OnlyFans work?
No.
No, you're done. Your whole career. You're never going back to it.
My long career of OnlyFans. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna do it. I think there's um I agree that at this point it would not be fair. Uh I would not see it being fair to the kids. Not to say that anyone who does OnlyFans is being like a bad parent or anything, but um I don't think that that's something that I would want to do at this point.
Gotcha. But that kind of leaves it open, like maybe at some point, right?
No, I'm saying as opposed to before. I think before there was a high probability of anonymity, and at this point, that's not something that is going to be likely.
Okay, gotcha. And then, well, I'm sorry. I know I said I only had a couple of questions, but something else comes to mind, which is I'm not the biggest fan of Avallone, but this has to be soul crushing for that guy. Like literally soul crushing
Mhm.
that this got out and that these messages were out there, and he's been running damage control for multiple days. And like, do you have any remorse at all that you did that to that guy?
So I do think I should not have trusted Kingston to the degree that I did. Number one, I shouldn't have trusted him, I think, in terms of helping me and Hunter with the sex work in the first place. And number two, I believe that I did divulge too much information to him. Um, I wish I didn't do that. Um, so those are the two things that I think I messed up on. Um,
Like, did Hunter know about the gangbang and shit? Did he know about any of that?
that was all after we had separated. He knew that I was trying
But he
to.
hadn't made a public announcement he had separated at that point.
No, yes, he had. He had. It was the 7th.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, so that was all post your separation that you were going to do all that.
Yes.
Okay. And there's not going to be messages that come out that you were like setting stuff up with other people.
What do you mean?
Like
That
somebody else like Kingston or
yeah.
other groups of people or something like that.
Nothing ever happened. I mean, I was considering, there were things that I was considering, but there was nothing that actually went through, right? And I think there's a huge difference between considering something and then actually implementing it, especially when you're the one who's calling the shots in terms of canceling plans. So, like, for example,
So
with
okay,
Texas,
go ahead. Sorry.
the whole thing with Texas, I was the one who canceled the flight and um, the hotel and everything.
Yeah, I got that, but what I'm asking is, are there other DMs that are of a similar type of this that are out there with other people that may possibly come out to show that there was kind of more avenues than just this with this guy that you were pursuing?
Oh no.
No. Okay.
Mm-mm.
Interesting. All right. I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me on, Tom.
Thanks, BPF. See you tomorrow. Okay. The only other thing I got is, for you and any other girls out there, like, obviously it's hard to find people who you can trust, especially for stuff like this, especially if you want it to be anonymous. So for any OnlyFans girls or anything like that, if you need somebody to look at your nudes and tell you how good they are, I am always here. I will always, my DMs are open. Just send them my way. I'll help you out and tell you if they're good or not. I can always provide that service for free, even. I like what I'll do it for free. Why not?
Oh, is this deja vu? No, I'm kidding. Ah, funny. Well, I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate the conversation. I hope I engaged with everything as honestly as I did engage with everything as honestly as I could. But
Yes, I believe you did. I'm sure there'll be 20 people reviewing it tomorrow saying that I'm a simp and that I didn't push back enough or whatever. But as far as I can tell, yes, you it was very enlightening. So thank you.
great. Well, you have an amazing night and have a good rest of your week.
You too. Later, Carissa.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. I have to pee so bad, but there's a lot of people with questions about the timeline here, so we're gonna pull stuff up and straighten that out. Yeah, like I said, I didn't know that she was gonna jump on. I sent her a message just saying, hey, I know Kingston's putting a lot out there. Hunter went on and talked. Chud said Kingston might go on his show. If you want to, have a conversation with somebody, I'd be happy to have you on. And she responded, it was just like, yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. I don't think I'm interested. And so I was like, okay. And then I just went live instead. If she had said, yes, my plan was to go and like actually build a timeline with all of the DMs and have everything right in front of me so that I could, have all of my questions out. Instead, I kind of typed up a bunch of questions while we were talking. So I didn't know she was coming on. I'm glad she did. I don't want to make it sound like I'm upset with her for coming on or anything, but I know that there's going to be so many people who are like, well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you say that? Why didn't you do this? And I was like, as soon as she came on, I'm like, crap, I'm not prepared for this at all. I have no clue what like a lot of other people's issues are with this whole thing. And so I talked to Sick. he said that he wanted to come on. And so I was like, okay, I got somebody who will give the pushback. I'm just going to ask questions, build a timeline, get the information so that he's able to... Tom, can you review my leaked pussy pics? Sure. And so yeah, so once I knew that he was coming on, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna ask questions, get the information, and then he'll have things to kind of work off of. Oof, that's not a great blur job. I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble for this. Oh crap. Oh man. I gotta run to the restroom real quick, and then we'll get to the other stuff. I will be right back. I'm gonna mute notifications for a minute. Okay, so a lot has happened since last night. First off, let me start with this, okay? Well, okay, let me just start. We had an interview with Carissa yesterday. Yeah, actually, Jake, dude's late on one of the biggest panels he'll ever moderate. Check my resume, homie. Okay, this is one of the smaller panels I will ever moderate. This is a great panel. It's a great freaking lineup. It's huge. Just still, you know, one of the smaller ones for me. But you know, it's all right. Not everybody knows. All right, so yes, plus the panel's freaking like in half an hour. We're fine. So let me start off with this. Okay, so after the so yesterday I interviewed Carissa. We had Sick and BPF come on and ask questions as well. Obviously I've had my personal beef with Kingston before any of this ever started. And so I've had a lot to say about him. But he felt like I was fair in the way that I interviewed Carissa, that I was like fair at representing him, that I was actually like looking for the truth and trying to get to the bottom of things. And so he unblocked me and we had a conversation. Obviously, my main thing this entire time has been that he didn't tell us why he leaked the information. And that to me is all that matters. That is 100% all that matters. All he cares about, or all I cared about, is that he tells us why he leaked the information. Until then, I have no reason to expect anything of Carissa. My logic this entire time has been, if somebody doxes me and puts out my personal information, and I lie and say, no, that's not my name. They're incorrect. That is not my real name. That's not my real address. There's no reason you should be upset with me. It's not my responsibility to like affirm information that they put out without my permission, unless there's a reason to do that. Unless there's good reason to do that. Like if they have good reason to leak information like this, then generally, yes, we would expect that of, you would expect me to tell the truth now. Because now I'm hurting somebody else's credibility unnecessarily, right? They need to have a good reason for posting this information. He has a good reason. So initially, he messaged me and said, hey, I appreciate the way you covered this. You were very fair. Can we get me, Hunter, and Carissa all onto your show, and you can moderate this for us, and we'll hash it all out. We can go over everything. They can ask me any questions they want. I'm very confused. I have a lot of questions for them. I still don't understand what all Hunter did or didn't know. Like, we need to get to the bottom of this. So can you please set this up? As of right now, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. We'll see. I have a panel that I'm working on. I had a lot to do today. My power went out 2 or 3 times while I was trying to prepare. I ended up doing a halfway job of getting ready for the panel and doing my intro and all of that stuff. You guys are all still gonna think it's super based and killer and all of that crap. You know, even my lackluster work is still amazing, but he told me that his entire thing was that he didn't want people knowing who he was. He was supposed to be anonymous. Nobody was supposed to know about him, not even Hunter. Nobody was supposed to know about him. And then, when he hears from other people that somebody knows who he is, and that he's being characterized as a pimp and as a sex pest, he did not like it. He felt like, okay, this is supposed to be anonymous. Nobody's supposed to know about me. Nobody's supposed to know who I am. Now people know who I am, and I'm being characterized as this thing that I don't believe to be true. So, instead of me being a pimp, instead of me being a sex pest, I will show all of the logs. And people can tell for themselves whether or not she consented, whether or not I'm being a sex pest or I'm being pushy, whether or not I'm a pimp, when obviously she's in the porn industry, I'm in the porn industry, there's no reason to call me a pimp. Now, I will just put it all out there, and everybody can just judge for themselves. This is a fairly good reason. And it seemed like she talked about some of this stuff in the interview yesterday, and she did talk about, talking to other people about him being pushy and crap like that. So here's my thinking, okay? That's a good reason. That is a good reason. That makes sense. That, to me, that makes sense. It doesn't justify putting out the half-blurred DMs. That's a bullet he's just going to have to bite from here on out. He just screwed up with that. He should have had them way more blurred. But showing the sexting, showing the interactions, showing how they got to those interactions, that now isn't too much detail. Now some of this makes sense. And the reason for doing it all seems to be justified. Carissa denies this. She denies that this is actually the case. And she has record of her telling people he's not a pimp. She sent me screenshots of her telling people that he's not a pimp. I have to verify a lot of this stuff. It's not all cut and dry. It's not all straightforward. Again, I got a lot to do today. I got a panel I'm working on. No, not she said. She showed me screenshots of her telling people this stuff. So, like I said, it's got to be verified. But there's she's showing me these things. So, my entire thing against Kingston this whole time was he did not tell us why he was doing this. He should have said this first thing, number one, at the beginning of the video. It opens up and he says, this girl's been saying this, this, and this about me, and so now I need to prove that that is incorrect. Here's the information. That should have been the number one thing that he said. And now, what is it? Over a week later, now we're getting this information. It's not great. And I'm not making this argument, but one could make the argument that he waited until after he saw the interview where she gave some information about what she was telling other people, and now he knows what she's telling other people, and he can use that post hoc as his justification for why he posted the information in the first place. Just as a random note, some of you might be wondering why I'm wearing this, why I've got this. The panel tonight, it's called Shootout. It's like Western themed, all of that crap. So we're that's it. It's not like I know it seems odd with me talking about this, and then yeah, but anyways. So that's that, okay? Now, one other thing. I have, like I said, I had my problems with Kingston before all of this. He feels like he's been unfairly represented in some of that. He sent me a more accurate quote from him on Twitter. So he said that, let's see, let me find it so I can like get these quotes accurate. The actual quote, let's see. He said, "Wake me up when you start an OnlyFans." And he says it was in response to sexy pictures, and Melina posted sexy pictures, and then he was saying, you know, or she was saying she was going to post sexy pictures, and he was saying, yeah, well, wake me up when you start an OnlyFans. And I called it sexist, but I said on stream that he said, I said that it was a political post, which it was not a political post. So all she said was, I have exciting new content coming out. So I misremembered that, but we cleared that up last night. And then I said that damn it, I don't see where he actually tells me what I said. Here, let me play it. Melina tweets out something political, something like innocuous. And he responds with, let me know when you create an OnlyFans. Till then, you have no use to me. Okay, so he says, yes, if I had actually said that, it would make sense why you thought it was racist or sexist, but he's like, that's not what I said. All I said is, wake me up when you start an OnlyFans. To me, that's the same thing, but for the sake of accuracy, that is not exactly what he said. So, because for his argument, like that, it's going to be key that is actually represented accurately, because he thinks there's a distinction between the two. And so seems like Kingston has a justified reason for why he would post this information. Now, what does that mean from here? What does that mean for Carissa? What do we care about now? She says that some of these relationships were coercive, and I talked to him about this a little bit. Mixing sex with work is dangerous, because if your sex relationship depends on your work relationship, and you tell somebody who you have a sexual relationship with and a work relationship with, if you don't do what I say, I'll delete your number. Now, It's, okay, you have to do the sexual things that I tell you to do, or else our business relationship is over. That is what a lot of people will perceive this as. That is what a lot of people would consider coercion. He disagrees that that would be coercive. And so that's where we're currently at. This is very similar to the situation with Destiny, where Mr. Girl and Lav are talking about, like, you know, he mixed the personal and the business, and now who knows what's what. Well, Destiny actually set up boundaries and said straight up, like, our personal and our private are not mixed. The sex stuff has nothing to do with the stream stuff, right? So you're capable of having these relationships as long as you set up boundaries within those relationships. I'm okay with it. I know that there's tons of people. We had a million debates throughout the Destiny arc where so many people kept coming on saying, no, you can't. You can't do both. You can't have all of this stuff at the same time. I disagree. I think you can have it at the same time as long as you set up boundaries. But the question is also, does he actually have any sort of, like, power in this relationship? Like, is he in a position where he can actually hold something over her head? Because it seems like she's kind of the moneymaker here. She's the one who can kind of, like, pull the rug out from under him and just be like, you know what? It's my OnlyFans. You've got nothing to do with it anymore. I'm walking. That's true. But also, he has a lot of the expertise. He has a lot of the knowledge. He's able to coach her. He's able to give her a lot of insight into things that she doesn't already understand. And so he was highly valuable to her. And this was a symbiotic relationship where both people were getting value from the other one, but it seemed like only one of them was saying, you don't do what I tell you, I'm deleting your number. So that makes it a little bit difficult. Then on top of that, I know that there's a lot of you who think that he's actually a pimp. He does not think he's a pimp. That's I understand why he's insanely offended by that. I don't think he's a pimp. I think that's insane. I think that anybody who thinks that he's a pimp based on the information that we have is kind of out there. You're a little odd one, but you know, whatever. Like, he's obviously not happy that people are going to call him a pimp, and then therefore this is part of his issue, is that somebody's calling him a pimp. So yeah, that's where we're at. All of this is confusing. And my recommendation to Hunter and Carissa would be to, yes, come talk to him live. Because every time we talk to one of you, the other one is going to have another version of events that is going to continuously happen for eternity. We will never endingly have back and forths of different versions of events. If everybody just does one call, everybody wants it to be over with. Everybody wants it to be over with. Kingston wants it to be over with. They want it to be over with. Everybody wants this to be over with. You do one call and just say, hey, this is it. We're going to hash it all out here. Everybody agrees to just stay here, figure it out. I will moderate. I will make sure that everybody's fairly represented. Everybody gets their side out. And then, yes, like at least Because right now, this was made public now. This was made public, and everybody has public perceptions. And I'm going to tell you, with this information currently, this is going to hurt the Avallones. Like, it just will. Like, there's already so many people who want to hate the Avallones, who want to go against the Avallones, who have so many things that they find to be insanely important in this debacle, and they all want to hate these people so badly. And so with these updates, like I have to say, the onus is on them now. The onus is kind of on them to kind of make this make sense. And yeah, like a part of his boundary was that Hunter was not supposed to know about him, not supposed to know anything about him. He was supposed to be just anonymous to everybody. And so if other people are telling him, hey, I know you're doing this, I know you're doing that. Carissa seemed to say on here yesterday that she talked to Hunter about everything in this stuff. It seemed like when he's saying, you broke your promises, I can't trust you anymore, this is what he's talking about. The fact that there were boundaries on this relationship, and the fact that he was supposed to stay anonymous and nobody was ever supposed to find out who he was. And then people found out who he was, and he leaked everything. Not everything. He was very selective in what he leaked, actually. And that's kind of part of the issue. Even while we're speaking, both sides are currently sending me DMs and screenshots and all sorts of stuff. I got a panel. I don't have time to do this right now. But I promise I will go through everything. I will figure it out. Really, my biggest frustration is that I wish Kingston just told us everything from the beginning. I wish he told us why he was leaking this information. That would have cleared up so much from my side. That would have made such a difference for me. But we have it now. We have the information now, and so we can move forward with this new information. I'm not going to say that I was wrong from before, continuously saying that, like, you know, I don't expect Carissa to have a position here, or you know, Hunter to like nail down all of these details about information, because with the information that I had, that was still the correct position to take. But with updated information, I am updating my position. Yes, this is kind of on them now. They have a lot to answer for. So yeah.